When I moved into that rental, the first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. Not the normal kind of quiet you get when you live alone, where you still hear distant traffic, a neighbour's TV, dogs barking. This was a different kind. Thick, like the building was holding its breath. It was a two-story house that had been chopped into separate units years ago. I had the entire first floor and a small finished room upstairs that the landlord called a bonus office. The place was old with creaky hardwood and door frames that didn't quite line up, but it was cheap, clean enough, and close to my job. After a breakup and a lease I couldn't afford alone, cheap and quiet sounded like peace. The landlord gave me one key and told me the attic access was up in the hall closet, but not to bother with it unless there was a leak. He said it like it was nothing, like an attic was just dead space. The first week, everything felt normal. I unpacked, set up a cheap couch, and made the place mine in the lazy way single guys do, by putting things down and letting them become permanent. Then little things started happening. The kind of little things that don't sound like anything when you say them out loud. It began with milk. I remember because I'm not a milk guy. I only buy it when I'm eating cereal, which is maybe once a month. One Sunday, I bought a small jug, poured a bowl, put the cap back on, and shoved it into the fridge door. 2 mornings later, I went to pour another bowl, and the level had dropped like I'd been using it all week. I stared at it, confused. I actually pulled it out and tilted it, like maybe the plastic had warped and made it look emptier than it was. It hadn't. It was noticeably lower. My first thought was that the fridge had leaked somehow, like it had evaporated into the air, which is stupid, but that's what my brain offered because the other option, someone had been drinking it, didn't make sense. I shrugged it off as my own bad memory. I was working long shifts and sleeping poorly. Maybe I'd made late-night cereal and didn't remember. It happened. I wasn't proud of it, but it happened. Then leftovers went missing. I'd brought home a container of pasta from a place near my office, eaten half, and put the rest in the fridge. The next night, I opened the fridge, saw the container, and felt relieved. Dinner solved. When I pulled it out, it was light. I peeled back the lid. Empty. Scraped clean. No mold. No smell. No, I forgot it for a week situation. It looked like someone had eaten it and rinsed the container just enough to make it seem less weird. That's when I started getting that prickly sensation at the base of my neck. Not fear exactly. More like annoyance. Like, okay, something is off here. I started checking the obvious things. Did I accidentally throw it out and put the empty container back? Did I leave it on the counter and clean up without thinking? Had I been sleepwalking? The last idea made my skin crawl, so I pushed it down. I wasn't a sleepwalker. After the food, it was objects. My TV remote would vanish and turn up in the bathroom on the edge of the sink. My keys, which I always tossed into a bowl by the door, would end up on the kitchen counter like I'd walked in and set them down there instead. My phone charger, which lived next to my bed, showed up plugged into the living room outlet one morning. It was nothing dramatic. No broken windows, no forced locks, no ransacked drawers, just small rearrangements. The kind of things you'd blame on a roommate, except I didn't have one. And then there was the smell. It was faint at first, like damp cardboard and sour laundry. It would drift into the hallway near the closet and then disappear. I'd step out of my bedroom and catch it, pause, breathe in again, and nothing. A minute later it would be there, thin and unpleasant, like someone had exhaled it and walked away. I bought an air freshener. I cleaned my drains. I blamed the old house. I blamed everything except the one explanation that felt too paranoid to say out loud. Weeks went by and I started to second-guess myself constantly. I'd set something down, and 5 minutes later I'd think, did I actually put it there? I'd lock the door, walk to my car, and then have that sudden doubt that makes you turn around and check the knob again. The weird part wasn't the missing food, it was what it did to my head. It made me feel unreliable in my own life. Then came the night sounds. The first time I heard it, I chalked it up to the house settling. Old buildings creak, pipes knock, wood expands and contracts. That's what I told myself at 3:07 a.m. when I woke up and lay in the dark listening. It sounded like a careful footstep above me, not a heavy step, not the random pop of wood. A slow, deliberate shift of weight, heel to toe. Then a pause. My eyes opened wide in the dark, and I held my breath without meaning to, as if my breathing could give me away. Another soft step, directly above the hallway. I sat up in bed and listened harder. The sound stopped. The house went still. I waited a full minute, heart thudding, before I lay back down. I told myself it was the upstairs room cooling. I told myself it was squirrels in the attic. I didn't even have proof there was an attic above my ceiling, just the landlord's comment and a vague memory of the hall closet. The next day at work, I felt stupid for being unsettled. I made jokes to myself about horror movies and rats in the walls, trying to drain the fear out of it. But that night, I made a new habit. Before bed, I checked every lock twice. A few days later, I came home and noticed the toilet seat was up. I live alone. I'm a guy. That doesn't sound like much, but I'm also the kind of person who puts it down without thinking because I hate the look of an open toilet. It's automatic. It had been automatic since I was a kid. I stared at it like it was a message. That night, I walked through the house with my phone flashlight on, checking corners like I expected to find someone standing there. I opened the shower curtain. I checked behind the doors. I even opened the hall closet and looked up at the ceiling, half expecting to see a trap door. There was one. A square hatch in the closet ceiling, painted the same colour as everything else. It had a little pull string hanging down. The edges were dusty, like nobody had touched it in years. The smell drifted down stronger when I stood under it. My throat tightened. I didn't pull it. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I was tired. I was letting stress make patterns out of nothing. I shut the closet door and went to bed, but I left my bedroom door open so I could see the hallway. Around 3 a.m., I heard the footsteps again. This time, they were clearer. 2 slow, careful steps. A pause, then a faint creak like someone had shifted their weight. I sat up, grabbed the baseball bat I kept near my bed, left over from a phase where I swore I'd join a rec league, and stood there listening. Nothing. I walked into the hallway and stood in the dark, the bat heavy in my hands. The air smelled faintly sour. My skin felt tight, like it didn't fit. I checked the locks. Front door, back door, windows, all locked. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. The next day I came home from work earlier than usual. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to catch whatever was happening while it was happening. I stepped into the hall closet to grab a hoodie, and that's when I saw it. A dirty footprint on the closet shelf beneath the attic hatch. Not a full boot print, but a partial sole mark smeared in dust. It was fresh enough that the edges were defined. My stomach dropped so hard I felt it in my throat. I stared up at the hatch. The pull string hung perfectly still. I backed out of the closet, closed the door, and stood in the hallway trying to force my brain to decide what was real. It was real enough that my hands started shaking. I didn't call the landlord. I didn't call a friend. I did something worse. I waited. That night I left a light on in the living room and pretended to go to bed. I turned off my bedroom light, got under the covers, and lay there fully clothed, bat beside me, phone in my hand. The house was too quiet. My ears strained for every creak. Minutes passed. An hour. My eyes burned. Then Just past 3 a.m., I heard it. A distinct creak from the hallway closet. Not the house settling. A hinge. Very soft. Very controlled. I sat up slowly, my heart climbing into my throat. The bat felt slick in my palms. The hallway light was off, but the living room lamp threw a dim glow down the corridor, enough to see the closet door. It was open, not wide, just cracked. I stared at it, frozen, waiting for my brain to tell me I'd left it like that. I knew I hadn't. Another sound, faint wood on wood above the closet, like pressure, like the hatch shifting. I stepped into the hallway, every muscle in my body tight. The closer I got, the stronger that sour, damp smell became, like sweat trapped in old fabric. I pushed the closet door open the rest of the way. The attic hatch was open, just a few inches, like someone had lifted it and was holding it there. The pull string hung at an angle, not straight down. My mouth went dry. I raised my phone flashlight with my bat hand trembling beside it. The beam hit the opening. At first I saw nothing but darkness and insulation. Then I saw a face. Pale, thin, dirty, eyes wide and wet, reflecting the light like an animal's. The person was wedged just inside the opening, their cheek pressed against the hatch edge, as if they'd been listening to the house below for hours. They didn't flinch from the light. They stared straight back at me. And then, slowly, deliberately, they raised a finger to their lips. A shh. Like I was the one making noise. Like this was our shared secret. I felt my entire body go cold in one instant. Every brave thought, every movie-style fantasy of swinging the bat, gone. My survival instinct screamed the truth. If I went up there, I would not come back down. I took one step back, then another, never turning away from that opening. The person's eyes tracked me calmly, like they knew exactly how little time I had before panic turned into action. I backed out of the closet and slammed the door. I didn't lock it. I didn't think. I ran. I sprinted barefoot through my living room, out the front door, and down the steps into the night, my phone clutched so hard it hurt. I didn't stop until I was inside my car with the doors locked and the engine on, shaking so violently my teeth clicked. Then I called 911. My voice came out wrong, thin, breathy, high with fear. I told the dispatcher someone was in my attic. I told her I had seen them. I told her I was outside and I wasn't going back in. Police arrived within minutes that felt like hours. 2 cars, flashlights, hands near holsters. They told me to stay in my car. I watched them go in, watched the beams of their flashlights sweep through my windows, watched one officer head straight for the hall closet like he'd done this before. When they opened the closet and pulled the hatch down, I held my breath so hard my chest hurt. There was shouting, muffled, urgent, then heavy movement above, then a thud like someone dropping onto the attic beams. A few minutes later, they brought him out. It was a man, older than I expected, maybe late 30s or 40s, hair greasy and tangled, cheeks hollow like he'd been living on scraps. His clothes were filthy, and his eyes never stopped moving. He didn't look at me once. He kept his head down like he was trying to stay invisible. One of the officers came out and asked me if I'd noticed missing food. My stomach turned. They found the nest in the attic, a sleeping bag shoved between beams, food wrappers, my food wrappers, and a stack of empty water bottles. They found a little battery-powered light. They found a makeshift stash of small items, a spare keychain, coins, a pocket knife, and then they found the part that still makes my hands go cold when I think about it. A small hole in the attic floor above my bedroom. Not big, just enough to look through, just enough for an eye. The officer didn't give me graphic details. He didn't have to. The image formed on its own in my head. Me asleep in my bed, the room dark, the house quiet, while someone lay above the ceiling watching through a pinhole. For weeks, I moved out the next day. I didn't argue about my deposit. I didn't finish packing properly. I grabbed clothes, my laptop, and anything sentimental, and I left the rest for later. Even now, I can't fall asleep without checking my locks twice. Sometimes 3 times. Sometimes I get up and check the closet ceiling in whatever place I'm living, even if there isn't an attic. People think the scariest part is the moment I saw him. It wasn't. The scariest part was realizing the missing milk wasn't forgetfulness. The strange smell wasn't the house. The footsteps weren't settling. The scariest part was knowing he'd been above me in the dark, close enough to hear me breathe, watching me sleep, while I lay there believing I was alone.